What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 431. My name is Steve. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
My name, Mr. Jomo.
I had
John.
one for you, John, that I was hoping you would have said. It was, I've been wanting a baby ever since I was a baby.
You know, honestly,
I took a note of it because I hope John picks this one because this is the one it should be.
It was honestly a heavy contender, but the simplicity of someone saying my name and then saying a character name that surely we're gonna talk about Jomo. Yeah, but no, that was definitely one that I considered.
Very good, very good.
So
well,
good instinct, Steve. That's actually a good. That's a good game. You should try to guess. You know, we should do that.
I watched this one like, what is John going to pick out? Because that's the one that hit me.
Yeah,
I was like, if I had it from my intro, it'd be this. But I'm going to rely. Maybe this is for John. But yeah, welcome to a new episode of the show. Today's episode, we're going to go through Ronald's pick for required viewing. I'm going to pick one for next week. We're going to talk a little bit about the premiere episode for Silo season 2, which is out on Apple TV Plus, and Ronald and John are going to talk the Penguin finale. I'm going to go silent for that one because I have not watched anything from this new show.
Holy moly, guacamole!
Yeah, I know. I can't wait to watch it, and I'll try to not listen to anything you guys are saying about it.
You know, I sort of envy the binge you're going to get to do because this is a show that it's like it was a great week-to-week show, and I was able to appreciate individual episodes for sure. But I also it was a fantastic example of one of those shows that when an episode ends, you're never more excited than you are at that moment, that handoff of like, well, how are they going to pick up from here? So yeah, you guys are lucky to get to binge it.
Anything you want to talk about? News relevancy this week between this and last before we get into the pick Ronald has?
Denzel is his name. Denzel Washington possibly joining the MCU. Something he revealed in this media run for Gladiator 2. I mean, he said that a role is being written for him. It doesn't feel like he was supposed to say it.
It definitely. I was going to ask you. Don't you think this is one of those like actor who doesn't have to worry about anything and he doesn't give a shit on the junket trail or whatever for a film, and then like just talking about projects? I mean, he probably thinks that sounds pretty cool. Maybe he even thinks I want to be the one to mention it. Like I want to be the one to get to break this. But no, that's Ryan Coogler is doing Black Panther 3. That's news enough. And really then cool that he's already writing it and that he's writing Denzel in. I think that is all that's a cool way to sort of clock that project for me. But yeah, Denzel joining the MCU, he's any big actor doing it now, it's kind of like, so this is how it could happen. This sounds like a perfect way for him to do it, you know? Because I have no idea what kind of character that might be, but surely it won't be like a cameo or something. It seems like a pretty big deal.
Nothing insignificant for sure.
Yeah.
Him talking about that. I like that. Probably let's just be honest. I think Ronald, you willed that into existence. Probably just by bringing it up last week.
Check the tape. Check the tape.
Check the tape, guys. Timestamp it.
We do release our episodes on tape now. People should know that.
Yeah. What did it say? Oh yeah, like it coming out like the other day, and the video started making the rounds again of Chadwick's speech about Denzel for the AFI Lifetime Achievement in 2019, and that there's no Black Panther without Denzel Washington, and it just seems like, man, it's so sad. It's so sad that like they couldn't be on that screen together in that context. But it's cool that if that's going to be the way Denzel comes into the MCU, for those that have been waiting to see him in that arena. I mean, hey, he's at the stage of his life and his career where it's like it's got to have fun. Like he's said it many times in this press round. It's like, I'm not retiring. I'm not making movies, but it's going to be something that's going to be fun, exciting, and it's going to be something different for me. So I mean, if Ron Coogler's making something happen for Black Panther, that's pretty fucking different for Denzel Washington.
It's very similar to the way Harrison Ford got involved in Captain America: Brave New World, where like when they asked him about it, he basically has said like, I like entertainment delivery systems. I like being a part of it. And like, he sees the MCU as like, I mean, he always says some really kind of interestingly clinical thing about it. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but he'll say like, they seem to have a passion for delivering entertainment to an audience. And that's something I can get behind. But I mean, I honestly think, Steve, what you're saying is like, they get to these stages in their careers where it's like, it's not going to hurt my legacy to do this, and it's going to be a fun. Like, I see these actors having fun, and I want to get in on that particular kind of fun. So yeah, why not? And I guess also Ryan Coogler for Denzel. That's got to feel like a pretty safe bet. That's not a guy who, even though Wakanda Forever isn't like everyone's favorite movie, no one thinks it's like hack work.
No.
So. Yeah. What kind of person would say that was a mediocre movie? It was pretty damn good. It was just super sad.
I saw what you did. Oh, another thing that's, speaking of super sad, I guess we should mention the passing of one Tony Todd.
Oh man,
the great. I mean, it's almost limiting to call him like a horror great, but that is where he's most known for. Is two roles: as Candyman most of all, and then with Candyman, the slasher with the worst sales pitch of all time. Be my victim.
Right.
But Tony Todd makes it sound good. And then as William Bloodworth, is that the guy's name?
Yeah.
William Bloodworth in the Final Destination films, the sort of creepy mortician who seems to know something about the nature of death. But I mean, he's also a guy who's been in a ton of other things. I think I first saw him in Platoon. But I don't know. Does anybody want to talk a little bit about Tony Todd's, like what his career means to you, or if there's a particular role that stands out?
I mean, it's overwhelming a little bit because I mean I've had Tony Todd in my life and in my ear up until as recently as like maybe 2 weeks ago. So I think about him as Candyman, incredible trilogy. I prefer Farewell to the Flesh over the other one, sequel wise. But yeah, just a really iconic horror villain. Just one of those guys that just, every once in a while I'll see like a poster of like horror legends, and I'll see like that beautiful jacket that he has with the hook, and the bees around him sometimes, or sometimes his mouth open with the bees, and that just is incredible. So like,
he's got a lot of business, Candyman. He's got the bees. Yeah. He's got the hook. He's got the jacket. He's got the. He appears when you say his name. Sometimes.
And then he attacks you in the project. So it's like,
oh yeah,
I'm already downtrodden, so you're gonna also affect this project area, which is crazy. But yeah, he just has this iconic presence. He's really big. And then look no further than this year that Spider-Man 2 comes out, and he's the voice of Venom in that video game, which is incredible because he's like, you got a good system going. That scary ass voice.
Got an awesome voice.
Yeah, it's coming through. Is incredible. So, the representation really mattered for me. Having somebody that was in this horror world that looked like me, I don't admire killers, but I thought it was really cool. Like I could picture myself on the screen. You know what I mean? That's what matters. Every once in a while, he's like, oh, okay, I can see myself on the screen. I can imagine.
Listeners might not know that you carry a hook and the bees fly out of your mouth. And I think you totally got that from
coincidence
Candyman.
there.
Yeah.
No, but Candyman is one of the only, possibly the only, of the sort of slashers that I ever hear people talk about as sexy. You know what I mean? Like, I've never heard anybody mention any of the other ones, but whenever Tony Todd comes up, you talk about that voice, those pipes. He's just got this unmistakable voice, and there is something about the power of the Candyman character that comes from that voice. And even though the character is creepy and he's killing people, there is a sort of love story nature to that character. So he has to work as a kind of romantic, tragic, not a hero, but a tragic romantic character, as well as a scary guy. And it's hard to picture anybody else pulling it off in the same way that it's hard to picture whenever people talk about replacing Robert Englund as Freddy or whatever, these people who bring a very specific like energy, but also like classic thespian chops to something like that,
Yeah.
And I think that's where Tony Todd got in, is like, he's not just born with this great voice, but he also like obviously knew how to use his voice very, strategically. So, and he does, looking at his resume, he's like a guy that has worked so consistently. There's a Final Destination movie coming out next year that he was able to film some stuff for.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. So we'll see.
No, definitely. I hope it's a big icon part in that like genre space. I always remembered him being like in an episode of the X-Files that I loved.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching Lean on Me in school. and he's in that. And that's probably the first time I ever saw him. But I don't know. Yeah, Candyman is iconic, man. That's enough right there that you kind of have him in the space of like immortal. You know what I mean? Like Candyman is the thing that, for everything else he's done, there's always going to be Candyman, and that is iconic. And the look, the one liner, like you were saying, or the sweets for the sweet, like these things are iconic. Like, and that's just one of the many things he did. So yeah, I for all the horror conventions I've been to and that he's been to, like I've always regretted not being able to meet him at one of the horror conventions, because he was definitely somebody who did a lot of conventions. Maybe not so recently, but in last like 10, 15 years, he's been at some of the ones I've been at, and I just haven't been able to meet him, which makes me sad. But
you know what else he was really good in? He was really good in a movie that people kind of shit on. The Tom Savini remake of Night of the Living Dead from 1990. He was the lead in that. He played Ben in that. And he was really I don't know, it's like an interesting choice to kind of carry that movie, but he totally, I don't know, he's one of the best things about it, I think.
He's also in The Crow, right?
Is he? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's in The Crow. Yeah, like I'm almost positive he's in The Crow. Like, again, like popping up in all kinds of genre stuff.
Yeah, he played Grange.
Grange, yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't know, just like he's in a lot of stuff, man. Like that's like people just saw him in many different things, and
he never stopped working. Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah, but yeah, sad to see him. Sad for the loss.
Rest in peace, Candyman.
Indeed. Let's not say the name too many times, guys.
I know.
Okay, we've already said it enough. No more sequences here.
Right. I don't want to just like disappear, get yanked.
What episode was that? Was that episode 224 when we talked about the whole Candyman series? I'll double check that. But if people want to hear us go on about Tony Todd, probably not as respectfully because he was with us still. So who knows if in that episode we're quite as respectful. But I think even then we appreciated what he brought to those movies. Above all else. But let me just see.
Tony Todd.
Well, while I'm checking that, Ronald, do you want to set us up for our
yes, please do.
Required viewing this week? Maybe tell us a little bit about your pick and how it crossed your path.
Sure. Gordon Parks, one of the greatest photographers. He also directed Shaft, which is a beautiful movie if you've seen the Criterion Collection edition, which is spectacular. He helped create a son, Gordon Parks Jr., who directed a blaxploitation movie written by the Max Julien, who is a really interesting guy. Like, the Mac is one of my favorite blaxploitation movies of all time. And blaxploitation is an interesting genre to me because it's exploitative, yes, but it also a lot of messages snuck into those films that just went over a lot of people's heads in production as they were being made, which is kind of the cool part about some of those movies that existed. And this is no different. Max Julien, who played the Mac, wrote this screenplay, and then Gordon Parks Jr. directed it. And it stars Max and Vonetta McGee, who is gorgeous.
I mean, I was like, am I going to be the after we if was it Shamir Zapata or Zamir Zapata, whatever her name is from Agatha All Along. I always get her name screwed up. But after talking about how hot she was, I felt sort of bad. I was like, am I going to be the one to bring up once again how hot an actress was? But yeah, I don't know that I've seen her before, or at least not noticed. Like I looked, and she's definitely in some things that I'm familiar with. But I don't know. I thought she was really good, and yeah, it's gorgeous, and it definitely had like the quality you kind of want a character like this to have. Where I almost kind of wish it was more her movie because I really loved
me too.
Yeah, like her kind of the bounty hunter stuff with her was like some of my, really just cool. The hint of that feels like a story that you could have spent more time with.
Yeah.
She was great.
I think the appeal, it's funny you say that because I agree. Kind of the appeal of Max Julien back in the day was like, there were people that were acting on screen, and then there was Max Julien, who is almost too casual with deliverance of him. Yeah, baby, you want me to capture the man? Well, you're gonna have to capture me, baby. It's like that. It's like very like.
I want to say you were more expressive just then than he typically is, because you moved your face and your head. He's very like laconic. I couldn't tell if he was doing something laconic or if it was like he just didn't have the drive, because like speaking of like a trained actor like Tony Todd or something, people can modulate their voice even when they're being soft spoken. They can have some force, but he sometimes was so soft that it almost, even when he like would do some action, like there's a couple times where he kisses her. There's one kiss that's like extremely full on mashing mouths together where there's some tongue involved, but most of his like kisses were these little kind of grazing kisses. I just feel like there's something very laid back and casual about him that is definitely the quality he brings to this. And sometimes it worked for me, and other times it really seemed like, oh, he doesn't know they're actually filming this. He thinks they're just like running through the scene.
Rehearsals.
But he also then would have these moments where when he would snap, where his voice like goes up into an upper register, and it's like it's almost like it was kind of herky jerky, and I felt like her acting really sold the story of what they were going through. And there were times where I felt like he was almost anachronistic, because he was so much what you just said, Ronald, just sort of like a chill dude, and not like, oh, this is a laconic guy, but more like, this guy's just hanging out. But maybe people acted like that in the Old West. I don't know. I was trying to think of other Max Julien roles that I'm that familiar with, and I've definitely seen him in a couple things. But I noticed he's the opposite of Tony Todd in that, like, if you look at his acting resume, it kind of stopped. Like, he was in a few things before this and a couple things after this, but there's really not much. And he's also known as a sculptor, and I don't know, very interesting guy. Clearly he lived a long time, but he did not do like constant movies.
I mean, the last big thing he was in was so long ago, and that was 1997's How to Be a Player. It was like,
is that the Bill Bellamy movie, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So he was the guy that gave the advice. He's like, you just gotta wake up about, don't spend money on the women. Don't. He was a real chill guy.
I couldn't place where I'd seen him before.
He was essentially the Mac in that movie. Really interesting, and I think that like. Wow. Him bringing that to this movie in the middle of these like wildly racist people saying crazy things to him, it's so funny that like it just I can't imagine like a kid in the 70s seeing the coolest cowboy ever on screen. I'd be pretty impressed. But there was like everybody's kind of up here and he's down here energy wise, and then like you said, Vonetta being actually really incredible. Like I could see her in other. It makes me want to follow her career a little bit.
I was going to say the same thing. Like I was at least want to see her in a few other roles.
Yeah. She really was powerful. She felt like the heart of the situation. He seemed kind of, even within the movie, a little too casual about some of their adventures, and she really grounded it. When he got hurt or he was in danger, you could really feel the emotional.
Well, he's also trying to be like Archie Bunker out there, being like, "Why don't you shut up and cook me some dinner?" Shit like that. And it's like there's so much in well, it's like you don't know if they were trying to depict him as chauvinist or if they were trying to show that he's like the kind, I don't know, I couldn't tell what they were trying to show there. You know what I mean? Because it did seem like, oh, this is just the 70s. This is just the type of relationship you see. People are slapping each other, and it's intense. It's crazy.
It is.
And it's kind of disturbing in a way, but it's also so of the time. I mean, I bet any movie we watch of this nature, a violent film with a romance in it from this era, there will be some scene where a guy grabs a woman and shakes her or pops her one or whatever, or where the woman slaps him. She hits him, in this too. But like, there is this weird thing where she's like saying, "How are we going to live? How are we going to survive?" And he's like, "What? You're still worried about that?" Oh, you're still going on about that? And she's like, "Yes, we're out in the woods. We've just given, like, they've robbed all these banks, and we never really see the Robin Hood shit happening, but we get a hint that they're giving the money to people less fortunate." And she has a pretty good case, I think, that they should at least be like, they should have a roof over their head or something. But I can't tell if the movie's trying to say, "Oh, look how silly she's being," or if the movie's saying, oh, these people disagree and reasonable people disagree, or are we supposed to be viewing him as like kind of a, an aloof to a fault? I couldn't really tell what the movie was trying to sell me, primarily because I felt like the movie really was wrapped up in the Max Julien kind of on-screen persona. This felt like an attempt to sort of build a movie around that like soft-spoken character that he is. So I don't know. It was interesting though. And but I think any movie from around this time, you'll find that like, oh, I can't tell if I'm supposed to think this is a horrible relationship or not, because she's like tearful, and I don't know. There's a couple of scenes where it really seems like, oh, he's being abusive, and she's like in tears. And then there's other scenes where it feels like they have a partnership and they're doing this, like she's almost running the show,
Yeah. The line that you said in the beginning of the episode, is that from the guy that stops him when he leaves outside of the gate and he almost shoots that guy in the belly? You know what I'm talking about, when the guy kind of approaches him like, are you who I think you are?
You're talking about Nathaniel?
Is that
that's that guy's name? The guy who meets him and basically says like, it's amazing meeting a guy like you. I guess he knows him as like this outlaw. We don't know at that point yet that he's known as an outlaw.
But he goes from like almost shooting the shit out of him to like, okay, yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. He was so close to killing him. That was a little crazy.
I liked what he says in that scene. That's the scene where the guy asks him, "Have you heard of a guy named, what's the guy's name? Adolf something."
Oh, right.
And then he's like, I heard he laughs when he kills people. And
Adolf
then the next
Butcher?
scene, he Adolf the Butcher. And then the next scene, the guy really does he doesn't quite laugh, but he does sort of chuckle a little bit.
Right.
But that guy was so evil. The guy with the cane that had the sword popping out of it, like just killing folks, and had a great voice too. Though that guy had a really deep, throaty voice. No, it was full of like, I guess a lot of these actors might have been in other like exploitation films or something, because it felt like it was like pulling from this, there were a lot of kind of character actor type roles in it. And that guy that played the marshal, the actor's name is George Murdoch. He played Marshal Bogarty. He's a character. If you look up his career, he's another one of those character actors that's just done a ton of things. But he was playing the most physically uncomfortable role. Like every scene, he seems like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like he did a great job of leaning into, and I think a lot of times the white actors that are playing the shitbags in a blaxploitation film, they really lean into the sleaze. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like you almost have to find an actor who really does not mind being like the worst thing on screen. Because I don't know, I felt like he really leaned into it. The worst one was that guy at the poker table, though. That guy was insufferable.
Yeah.
He immediately starts like crying, when he pulls the gun.
The kid that's like, that's just about the prettiest Negro girl I've ever seen in my life. I loved his face when he saw her, man. When he was like describing her.
Yeah.
It was just like I liked it.
I liked it. It was fun.
I liked it a lot.
It moved at a clip. That was the other thing too. Is you couldn't really get bogged down with it,
Yeah.
Yeah, it moves really fast, and it's not that it's very short to begin with.
Yeah, right.
So it's like you really can't be bothered by the things that maybe were a little distracting, or like, what was that supposed to be?
Right. You don't have enough time
on to the next thing. Yeah, it's like.
Well, I mean, it seems like it's aware. Like, even though we're commenting on his laid backness as an actor and how maybe that doesn't always serve the drama, the movie is commenting on it, like her being like mad at him for not being more emotionally involved like she is. That's a character thing. And also, even when he takes the guitar out, I'm very sensitive to this. When someone has a guitar in a movie and they clearly don't know anything about playing guitar, and like how they'll sometimes work around it and give an actor something to do, with him like tapping on the guitar and singing that one song. But then later when he's playing guitar, Jomo's like, "You suck at guitar."
Glenn Turman, he says it flat out.
But it's hilarious to me that while Jomo's telling Bushrod that he sucks on guitar, we're thinking that Glenn Turman did not do a very good job of like working with an accent coach. He sucks at doing a Jamaican accent.
Yeah.
That was all over the place. And it was funny because I was so looking forward to seeing when I saw Glenn Turman's name in the credits. I was like, oh, he's got to be young-ish here. It'll be interesting to see what he's doing. So I was watching it like I wouldn't know it was him. Like, am I going to know when Glenn Turman's in it? I really want to see. But then when he shows up, he literally is not in the movie, and then he jumps out of nowhere into an open doorway, pulls 2 guns, and says, "My name, Mr. Jomo," and then shoots a guy. and that's like the most subtle thing he does in the movie. Right. I don't know. That was an interesting, fun character, and he fit that role of like the friend of the hero that bad things happen to, you know. But it was so rushed and also so bizarre, and that whole scene with the guitar and the harmonica and the call and response. I don't know. It was insane. That scene was, and then they end up doing that like old timey put a chip on my shoulder shit. I don't know. That was a crazy scene, and where they end up making her dance for them. That's how the scene.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I don't know, and it kept intercutting with the marshal and the guy dying in the bed. Yeah, it's just like funny, sloppy kind of filmmaking, but there's still some kind of, like you said, Ronald, some watchable quality to it.
Yeah, for sure. I give it a 10 out of 10. It's crazy. There was a guy that had a theory that people didn't speak differently back in the day in movies, which is fucking bullshit. Because they did. Like, there was like a pacing difference in the way people spoke in movies. Maybe they felt like that was the way to speak when you're in the olden times, but there was very much like everyone was going for it, I'll say.
Yeah.
And then a pacing to their speech that was, man, Adolf was really killing people from across the room, which I really thought was fucking crazy.
Did you notice when he left, he kind of brandished it at all the dead people in the room? He kind of shook his weapon at them before he went and hopped in the car. We should talk a little bit about the ending. What an ending. That was like, that went from like 0 to 60 and then ended.
Yes. It felt like the scene in Jungle Fever where Halle Berry comes up to him and he's like, oh, it's like, and he's like, no. He like holds her face and like looks up at it. It felt like Message. It's like, it really felt heavy. Like, it's like, all right, we get it. This art imitates life. It's all that stuff. But God, was that somber? Yeah.
I almost would love to see the version where it was switched, where he dies and then she's the one who has the insane charge at the marshal. Because I feel like with all the things we just said, she was more of a character to me. So it felt sad. I just felt sad that she died. Like when she got killed, I was like, oh, that's really sad. And then when he's charging with the weapons, I was like, oh, he's having this kind of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid kind of ending where he goes out in a rain of bullets and you don't really see it. In fact, all you really see is the marshal get got. You don't really see. You just reason that he's being taken out by all the guys. There's no way he can survive this. But I feel like that's the kind of, and also it was meant, we haven't mentioned that this is meant to be like an answer to Bonnie and Clyde, and that is a go down in a rain of bullets kind of movie at the end. So it's very much meant to mirror that. I don't know. I always love to see these movies that are just sort of off the beaten path of what people are talking about. I mean, you say blaxploitation Western, and I'm like, okay, I'm interested. And then you tell me it's the guy from the Mac, and it's him. That's his movie. I don't know. It's like I definitely was intrigued to see it. So
cool. And it's a lesser known blaxploitation, so that made me want to see it even more. It's funny. This popped up after we watched the Netflix one with Jonathan Majors. So after that, lists kept coming up of here are incredible black westerns, and Thomasine and Bushrod was always within those lists. And I'm like, I just kind of kept it in the back of my head, and this might be the time to put my Mojo card down.
Your Jomo card.
My Jomo card. I don't know why I said Mojo.
Well, there's some mojo at play.
You could get your Jomo back.
Like my Jomo back. Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Yeah, tell us, Steve.
Yeah, I'm going off the path a little bit. Not really, but I mean, we're all over the place with our picks.
Yeah, what path?
Okay.
I'm only going on this path because this is one that it'll be every great reason for me to finally get around to watch it, because it's like the rare movie that Aaron actually wants to watch or has been
Ooh.
wanting to watch. This is this is a movie that had some like buzz around, I think Toronto, or maybe it was South by, but it's a movie that Netflix put out a few weeks back called It's What's Inside.
Mm.
And it's kind of like a mystery horror sci-fi comedy. It's about a group of friends that get together like for a wedding party or a pre-wedding party, and basically one of their old friends kind of comes with this device that seemingly allows them to like switch consciousness with each other. Or there's some element of that where like all these secrets start coming out, and there's a mystery behind something that's happening at this like round table party trick that's happening. But the trailer is really slick and really good. It has a little bit of a Talk to Me vibe in terms of like a table,
I was wondering
kind
about
of round table, like kind of there's some magic trick happening or not happening, but there's like higher power level things at play that seemed, I don't really know a ton about it. I know Netflix bought it like really quickly at the festivals, and you know, kind of put it out a few weeks ago. It popped on their charts for a couple weeks, and now it's seemingly gone into the ether. So I figured I'd come back around to it a couple weeks after, and you know, obviously with the push from Movie Schmovie, it'll pop right back into the top 10.
Has to, yeah.
Of course.
Clearly.
Of course.
But yeah, it's on Netflix. It's called It's What's Inside. It's got really great reviews. Audience ratings really good too. So I mean, it seems to be kind of like a fun watch, and we'll talk about it next week.
Awesome.
Cool.
By the way, just to follow up, yes, it was episode 224 of this show when we talked about the Candyman series up at that point. Right. And then the actress's name that I was mangling before that I should definitely remember is Sashir Zamata. That's the name.
Ah, right.
Sashir Zamata, who played Jennifer Kale on Agatha All Along. Well, what's next? So let's talk about Silo, right? We all saw the first episode of season 2 of this show that we all liked season 1 of. I think we all really bought into the sort of world building that they were doing in the first season and liked the kind of closed world concept that it created. You know, it's that kind of dystopian future where you take a highly controlled situation, and then the mystery of the story is kind of like figuring out what are the rules of this group of people, and how did they link up to our world and all of that. And the first season didn't really end on a note that explained everything, but we did come to understand a few more things, which is that there has been some kind of ecological disaster up on the surface, and that it is a place where you wouldn't be able to survive at all if I mean, not for long, if at all. And so these people that are living in this underground silo are correct to be staying down there, even if it seems like there's some lies being told about exactly what put them there. And then the other thing we found out at the end of the first season is that they're not alone, that there's other silos, and there's, in fact, it seems like there's a ton of them that are kind of clustered very closely to each other. And so that's where the first season ended was, oh yes, you will die if you come up and you start to breathe this air, and we're not alone. So, you know, I don't even remember when that season ended, but I do remember when that show went off, I was super invested in the story. It took me a minute to get my bearings, to get back into the world and remember what we knew and what we had figured out. But I don't know if you guys had that feeling watching the first episode of season 2, that like you needed a little refresher of what happened in season 1, or what did it come right back to you?
I needed a refresher for sure.
Yeah, I would say I watched a refresher.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you know the first season aired. I want to, what was it, end of 22 or something like that? It wasn't, or early 2023. Like, I feel like it was the one of those, especially the Apple TV series that.
Yeah, it ended in June of 2023, so not that long ago.
So yeah, a year and a half maybe. I don't know, but in perspective, like that's pretty quick for some of the shows for Apple TV. Like, some of their sitcoms come out really quick, but these like bigger production shows, like for example Severance, you're talking multiple years. Yeah,
that's wild actually.
But yeah, I did watch a little brief recap just for some of basically the last couple episodes of the last season. But yeah, I love this show. Like, you know, it's funny seeing seeing Silo, and not that it's the same kind of show even, but even recently with like Fallout, coming out on Amazon Prime with this idea of like these other things and like these interdependencies, whether you know about them or not, or how they do these things across, more so in Silo. I mean, more so in Fallout. Sorry, like how that all kind of played together.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the whole first season, like the feeling of like the idea of manipulation and control, and uh the ideas of like little kernels of truth coming out to form some sort of resistance, or a rebellion rather. And you know, to kind of the finale, especially like that feeling of when she walks out of the silo, and what happens and what it's going to look like after that. So yeah, getting into the pilot and seeing how that's already started to take hold, you know, in her silo or in her bunker, and you know the efforts of Tim Robbins and you know and co to try to control that. The idea of control, you know, like of all this is really interesting. So I'm really excited to see where they go with that. My big takeaway from it is really just like I can never get enough of Steve Zahn. So I forgot he was even part of the second season, and I didn't even watch a trailer.
I didn't either
for it. So like to know that you know he's there and he's going to be a part of the show.
Is that him at the end of the first episode?
Yeah, that he's a part of the show. Yeah,
I'd forgotten he was part of this too, Steve. And I was sitting there thinking like, however this show expands its world, they have the opportunity to really wow us with somebody. And so not thinking Steve Zahn, I was just like, oh my God, who is that? I bet it's going to be somebody great, you know, but if that's him, that's a fantastic introduction to him. I can't wait to see where that goes.
I love him. And yeah, he's kind of had moments. He was in like White Lotus and this, and he's in that new Glenn Powell series, the Chad Towers series.
He was also Righteous Gemstones. He was
Righteous Gemstones. Yeah, like he's everywhere, man. I can't get enough of him. So whatever his involvement is going to be in this second season, I can't wait to see like him and Rebecca Ferguson, you know, together, like two favorites. And it's just like, give me more of both of that. So.
Well, I mean, when you said how much you like Steve Zahn a second ago, Steve, I thought you were about to say what it really underlined for you was you could watch Rebecca Ferguson literally do like a house project, you know, like she was that's like I was basically watching. I mean, honestly, I loved it when I realized this episode was going to build on this idea of the title, The Engineer. You wonder if it's going to be about some flashback or something, but it's really about watching her character Juliet figure out a problem or solve a problem. And she's totally like Wile E. Coyoteing her way through this problem. She has like we see her try. I just want people to understand it's so rare in a film or a television show that you see someone try something that doesn't work, then try another thing that doesn't work,
right,
and then try another thing that works. It's like so often they try something that doesn't work, and then you get a montage, and then it works or something, you know. But this was like once I realized they were doing that, I was like, I hope this second thing doesn't work. I hope that, you know, because I could see it's watching an actor carry a scene like that and watching her, like she's so engaging and she's so great and she can do that action stuff. I don't know. She's one of those people that's just fun to watch, like her physicality. And there's like a cleverness to her physical acting that I think made her a good action star in like the Mission Impossible movies. But you know, there's some actors who can just do it. And you like to watch them climb up things and swing around and stuff. And she's just someone that can, she can, you know. So I totally loved spending this much time with Juliet. And so much so that when I started watching the second episode, which we won't talk about, but I started watching it, and it jumps to other characters. And I found myself thinking like, there's almost like a Poochie effect. I'm like, well, everyone should be asking, where's Juliet? You know?
Right.
Because she's so magnetic of a performer. But I don't know. I think that it was really cool to get into this episode. And I don't know if I'm supposed to understand exactly like the memories that she's having in that episode. Those were her flashbacks to her life in the other silo, right? But it just happened to mirror this silo. So what she was doing was she sort of knows the layout, but it's
mapping
not. It's not okay. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss something with her actually. Like no one ever knew about these other silos, and this is something new. But it was really. Even like her going back to the same closet to get another jumpsuit after she gets all wet and she has to bandage herself up again. All that stuff was just, it reminded me of like Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad, where you just procedurally hang out with a character and watch them figure out something.
Right. almost like the bee episode where the bee got into the yeah, just like a slice of life sort of thing as drug deals. But yeah, it felt like that with this episode. Like she is really, you're right, like she's really charismatic, and there's it's like I wouldn't have done it like that, but that's because she's smarter than me. You know, it's like she's an engineer. She knows how to. She's like a little MacGyver. It's like it's crazy watching the rolling one. I was like, oh, let's do it. That was so good.
Even she was surprised that it worked. Like she has this little moment.
Yeah,
I don't know. It almost. I know it's a weird comparison, but you know, it's like Harrison Ford is, and even Bruce Willis in the Die Hard kind of example of like watching a character figure these things out. There's a little like talking to yourself kind of thing that's going on, or a little like, she didn't quite do that, but she does have that moment or two where she's like, there's a goddamn it moment, you know, and then there's also that kind of it worked kind of sensation.
Yeah.
So
really
much so
cool.
that you can kind of walk back and forth on it now. Now she's got an actual bridge. But no, I loved that, and I think the episode ended great. Like I totally am on the hook to see what's next in that part of the story.
Yeah, definitely excited to have the show back, because that was one of those ones where it's like, wow, this is like, I did, you know, it built its fan base, you know, its viewership like grew as the show came out. So that's like another win for Apple. So I'm excited to have it back for sure. Are you guys gonna do Penguin now?
I guess we should.
I think so.
Okay. All right, guys.
Well, you just we'll text you. I guess we'll just say.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So Ronald, there's so much I want to say about the Penguin, but I think that I think there's one way to break this conversation down where we can be sort of clean with it, and that is to say, there's a moment in this season where I realized that we have 3 leads. So I think we can talk about this show in terms of like, we can talk about obviously Oz Cobb. We can talk about Sophia Falcone or Gigante, and we can talk about Vic. So those are our 3 sort of leads of the season. 3 people who get like a legitimate arc, legitimate character development, legitimate payoffs. I was overall very impressed with the storytelling in this show, and the quality of everything, the way it was shot, the way it was written, the way it was performed. But the real revelation was that it did have this kind of operatic, kind of tragic arcs and scope to it. And the fact that we get these 2 other characters, like so often when you have a villain story, if you take a character that you know is a villain and you want to give them a story, Ronald, what you do is you create a worse villain than them, you know?
Right.
But what this show did was create characters that are other villains, but Oz is still the worst. You know what I mean? Like Sophia Falcone is a villain. Vic, as much as we love him, he's like signing up to be a henchman for a villain. He's a villain, but they aren't as bad as Oz Cobb. So this season ends with us feeling like, man, the Penguin has now become someone that Batman should be interested in, you know? I don't know. I thought it was brilliant in so many ways. It's not a perfect season, I guess, but I don't remember that many moments where my attention was lagging at all. What do you make of that idea that they managed to really tell a villain story? And the way it worked was by creating other characters that are actually more sympathetic than our lead character. They didn't go the anti-hero route, Ronald. They didn't try to make him into Walter White. They made him someone that I really want to see Batman beat this guy up, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's a lot of times people are surprised that comic book movies are good. And I think that I guess the element, since, you know, we both engage in some comic book reading, is that you realize that like the stories have always been there forever. It's just that they've done a terrible job of translating the emotion, the action, you know, the storytelling, the intricacies of storytelling within some of those worlds. I mean, the Gotham is pulpy. I don't know why this is like a surprise to people, but I could understand it would be a surprise if you base it on movie translations of comic book stuff, characters. You know, I could see how somebody be like, I can't believe that this was a comic book show. Or, you know, it's really interesting that if you change the names, it would just be a really good mafia show. It'd be like a really good
it
organized
would, Ronald,
crime.
But don't you think that where they did push the comic booky stuff was so precise? Like there were a few things that made it comic booky. Do you know what I mean? Like the sort of underground layer where the drugs are being made. The compressed timeline. All this is supposed to happen in a few weeks. There's no way. That's very comic booky.
How many acts of terror can be in one place? Like that's.
Right. But every act of terror was insane, too. Like, every act of violence was an insane act of violence. So it's very comic booky in that way. You know what I mean? So I think that...
Yeah, for sure.
I think that... And even him gradually acquiring his... Like, halfway into the season, when he's down in the lab, he's got... It's like, I guess it's cold in there, because they have to keep it cold for the mushrooms. And he's wearing, like, a big coat. Even just seeing him in a nice coat, you were like, oh, he looks a little more like the Penguin right now.
Right.
But if the season ends, he's just got a tux and a top hat. He doesn't put the top hat on, but he's got it. And you totally see how he's become that guy. That's very comic booky, but it's precise. It's like...
It's really precise.
I don't know. I was one of many people that said Gotham City was one of my favorite things about Matt Reeves' Batman movie, that they kind of got the milieu of the story right.
Yeah, for sure.
But I didn't quite know what I meant of that. It's like I don't know quite how he did it, but he managed to make a Gotham that felt like the Gotham of a comic book, where it's a labyrinthine world and it's dark and it's shadowy and it's almost like a scary place, you know, not just a crime-ridden place, but kind of a creepy place, haunted. But this movie then feeds into this show, and I was like, it totally expands on that and makes me feel like, which also is very comic booky, to say, oh, this is happening in this world. This is in the aftermath of what happened in the movie. So it's weird. I think people talk about how grounded the Matt Reeves approach is, but he doesn't spare you the fun of the kind of extreme characterizations that you would get. So yes, it was like a Gangland Saga with comic book clothes on, but the comic book stuff was, again, I just think it was really judicious. So let's get into our characters. I guess we'll kind of go up the line. Vic, man.
Tremendous character. Really sad what happened.
Yeah.
It's my wife called it like a half an hour before the episode ended. And she's like, it's going to happen. Like he's dying. It's like he can't make it past this up. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's just like, I'm telling you, this guy, I'm following his logic. He cannot exist in this world that's being created right now. And I'm like, maybe season 2. Sure enough, man. I was devastated.
I was too. It's the saddest, because it's a moment where the Vic has just said that you're like family to me, and Oz is even agreeing and then saying, and that's why I can't have you. It's because you know me too well. You've seen me vulnerable. It chokes him out. A hug. He hugs him and kills him. And then, Ronald, he basically erases his identity. I saw some people saying something about, oh, it's so bad he even takes his money. I hope people understand, Oz doesn't need the $12. He wanted to make it look like a robbery. He takes out the ID, throws it away, so no one will know who Vic is. Vic doesn't have people in the world, so no one's going to look for him. The wallet's empty. Someone robbed him. They're going to think it's just a faceless crime. He basically erases Vic's whole self. So it's ironic. Vic is saying, you're the guy who's going to help me be somebody. And at the end, Oz does just the opposite of that. He makes him into a nothing, and that's fucking depressing. But I'll tell you, Ronald, when I called it, when I knew, I thought Vic might die all through the season. But when I knew he was going to die, or not knew, but I had a feeling in my stomach, when he chooses not to go off with his sweet girlfriend and escape all this, he didn't have any reason not to go, except that he's curious about the power he might get. He's curious about maybe making his own, you know what I mean? Like maybe even going out west later, but with a little bag of loot or something. He's not thinking about like getting out of town. He's thinking about like, what can Oz do for me? So like in that moment, I was like, oh, this is a tragedy. Because you don't show a character make a choice like that unless your point is that they shouldn't have made that choice. You don't give a character an out that they don't take. Well, let's move on then to Sophia. I mean, I think Kristen Milotti is a fantastic actor in so many things, but I still was unprepared for how much that character just swoops through this show and like takes it by storm.
Charismatic, like one of the better written characters I'd seen in so long, man. Like it's just the ups and downs, the pain, the struggle, the not fitting in and try to find your way, and still just having it being kind of taken away from you from a terrible person who betrayed you already. Like it just Penguin. I really. So I think that's the groundedness that people are kind of talking about. Like I don't know if before this we have ever seen a character commit to being a villain quite as deeply as Oz had. We've seen it in like horror films, like the commitment to be like, I'm a killer, I'll slash your neck and hang over your body, and but like seeing this through a guy that functions around these people, and then he does this thing where he's like, I'm afraid of you, and then he'll kill you when he gets a chance. It's just like this. He knows when to get small and when to get big, and I think there's something really amazing about that. And what he does around Sophia, and you could tell there was like a thing that they had, like a real bond that she thought they had. But
yeah, when that moment of betrayal where she's like, I don't know if I can trust you, but I think you might care about me. And then we find out not only does he not, like, that's that scene where Vic's like, what about Sophia? And Oz is like, fuck, leave her. And from that moment, it's not like that's it, but you start to see how much he's not that guy who, the first episode, maybe second episode, you see him as like a guy who's been kicked around and maybe has heart. But it's like, I don't know, the show did a brilliant job. Colin Farrell said in some interview, people seem to because people were saying like, after the first couple episodes, people like Oz. And he said, you won't like him after episode 8.
Yeah, he was right.
And I was like, oh shit, what does he do in episode 8? And that's another reason why I thought, he must kill Vic, But I'm glad he didn't kill Sophia, even though I'd love it if Vic was still around. I feel like the arc of the story, if there's no more, they've since said there might be a season 2. We now know Penguin shows up in Batman 2 and 3. They're doing something big with his story. I now see him as like a top level Batman foe. And I'm not kidding when I say I can't wait to see what he pulls. What is that character, as played by Colin Farrell, what is he going to try in Batman 2 that Batman has to smash down? And how gratifying is it going to be to see it happen? Maybe he won't be the main villain in 2. Maybe we won't see the real fight until later.
Right.
But if all they do in this world is say the Penguin is top tier, I don't know. As a comic book guy, I really loved this interpretation of the character. And I think, that's back and forth between him and Sophia was the perfect way, because she's scary and she's psychotic. But we saw her backstory. She was made that way by him and her dad and the system. And so there's something very sympathetic about her. So I'm glad she's around to complicate his life another day. And I also think it's what happens to his mother is incredibly tragic. After begging him to not let her become a person who's bedridden and can't do anything for herself, and kill me if I ever become like that, he's now like keeping her alive to keep his illusion of himself, his lie in his heart alive. Like the fact that when her finger was going to get cut off, he still wasn't going to admit to the things she already knew. He's in such denial. It's crazy. So yeah, I guess we've already talked a little bit about it, but let's just say it. Colin Farrell's depiction of Oz Cobb is something no other actor has done in my mind recently that I've seen.
No, it's a revelation, man. Like it's between Sophia, Falcone, Gigante, seeing those two characters and Vic and just this path that they're each carving out in the world. It's incredible. It's incredible. And the fact that they did it in this like families thing that's easy to understand. Like we've seen enough mafia movies that we know, the families keep it together. There's a loyalty. There's there's people that can't get inside the family. That's like, that's like Oz. Oz, it will never be in the inner circle of this group. So he has to destroy them if he wants their power. It's like the stuff these inevitable things that have to happen, that you understand that logic watching mafia stuff, watching like Sopranos, but it flips it on its head because Oz is way worse than all the things that Tony Soprano did doesn't measure up to what Oz does in this one season. I want to fight him. I want to fight him.
But the Tony Soprano comparison is apt because, like Tony, he's kind of funny. Like Oz is a funny character. I was trying to think of what my favorite like odd little moment of his this season. And there was one moment. Actually, I thought of you when it happened because I was like, "This is funny," and I bet Ronald found this funny when he's fighting with Clancy Brown, Marconi, and Marconi starts to have the heart attack. Oz is kind of standing there, and he says, "What are you doing?" Like, what are you doing there? And it's just like, that's just Colin Farrell embodying this guy. But that felt very Tony Soprano to, in the middle of this fight, to just have this brief moment of confusion of like, what kind of like, what are you playing? What are you trying? But also like, wait, what are you doing there, pal?
Yeah.
But no, Oz is a funny character. Colin Farrell plays him with such. It's amazing. I mean, honestly, I started off this season thinking a little bit like, couldn't they have found an ugly, overweight guy with bad hair to play this? And then it gets to the end, and I'm like, I can see the wisdom of getting a great actor to throw himself into this. I can also see the wisdom of letting this character be a creation and not a person that exists. There's something powerful about that in terms of movie magic. Sure. And I loved the ways in which you got through the season, and more you could see Colin Farrell through that makeup. Like his eyes. There's something about Colin Farrell's eyes. I don't know. He's one of our greats right now. So I think it's fun to see him kind of strut his stuff in a role like this. Very showy, very flamboyant. I don't know how many awards the show will win, but I feel like if it doesn't win for makeup, then there's something wrong in this world.
Something is wrong. Like, there are moments where he's like, particularly when the first scene where the brother is sitting across from Oz, and you're establishing how he wants to be viewed in the world, and he's like, "No, that's not who I want to be. You are lame. You only want this because it's just like this unraveling of this person who you think is going to be an ally, and seeing his face." The pain behind his eyes, and then when it turns to anger, and then he shoots the guy. It just feels like I don't, and then think I was ready.
And then immediately recognizes he shouldn't have done it. He immediately goes, "Fuck." But I mean, that's that character. You're right, Ronald. That's like that scene tells you more than you think it does at the beginning of the season. He's impulsive. He's got hurt feelings. He doesn't like being laughed at, and he's capable of instantly recognizing, "Oh shit, I just made things worse for myself."
And they used Sophia's insanity, or perceived insanity, as like this, like her perception of him might be a little off because she's a little off. But I realize this, if you listen to everything she said and listen to what her brother said, everybody's telling him the truth. Nobody at any point really compromises on like saying things just because they're angry. Like, they're telling him exactly what he is. You're a terrible snake person. I've seen you. And it feels like they're just saying that because he's a not the most handsome man.
Like they're being mean to him, right?
It feels like a bully thing. And then you realize, no, this guy is awful. And they detect this in this person. And that's why it's happening the way that it is. So
and they tell us throughout the show, but we have to
a million times.
Well, I guess I think Steve's getting itchy, so let's do one thing here. What did you think of the ending, the very ending moment where Eve says to him in that creepy scene where he's got his girlfriend dressed up like his mom and telling him, "I love you, my brave boy," or whatever. But then she says, "Who can stop you now?" or "Who's going to stand in your way now?" And then we cut to outside and we see the bat signal switch on in the clouds. I love this notion because people were saying all season, why would Batman not be getting involved in this gangland saga? I don't think Batman gets that involved in a gangland saga where it's bad guys killing bad guys. Here's what I think. I think if Batman was poking around in the ashes after the explosion, we just didn't see that scene. I would not be surprised if in Batman 2 we get a sense of what he knew or what he saw of this. Right. But either way, I love the idea that at the end of the season, the Penguin has reached this apex for himself, but now he's on the radar of fucking Batman. I don't know. To me, that just even if that last image was more symbolic than it was literal, I love the idea that what we just saw was a guy come to the level where now the only person that can really stop him is Batman. Yeah. And like I said, I can't wait to see them tangle. I just think it's going to be really fun.
So good, man.
All right, well, let's bring Steve back in. Oh yeah, I'm impressed too. I'm glad. I wish Steve could have been part of this. Steve, you're back in.
Just want to say that I agree with everything that both of you said.
You agree? I can't wait till you watch the show because we're gonna say I told you so.
I mean, I think I'm in the bag already.
I think you are. I think you are, man.
What's funny, Steve, is I think you might have been more in the bag in a way than Ronald and I would have been from the start. Like, I think we all liked the Batman, though. But I'm just saying, I think that you're the most surprising person of the three of us to have not watched this show.
Yeah. I accept that fully. I've dropped the ball.
But you saw something we didn't see. You saw Hugh Grant in The Heretic. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Hugh Grant's amazing, man. Like, I feel like he's we talked about, like, we mentioned earlier, like Denzel and Harrison Ford, like they're doing just like they're in a phase of their careers where they're just doing all kinds of interesting stuff. Like Hugh Grant is in Wonka, and he's in Dungeons and Dragons, and he's in what's that Guy Ritchie? Was he in The Gentleman? Or he was in one of those?
He was in a couple of those, but and it's like him. He's usually the best thing about whatever movie you're talking about.
Yeah, and that's the same case. Yeah, I mean, everybody in this movie, it's barely like a three-headed monster of great performances. But Hugh Grant just stands out to me just because, like, he is Hugh Grant, and to see him in a movie like this is different, and he's just diabolically like horrible. He's so the intelligence and the concepts and the conversations around religion and theology and just all this, really what the movie's based around. These two I don't know the proper terminology, so forgive me, but like a Mormon missionaries or sisters, or they have their marching orders in terms of what they're doing for the day, and they go to this gentleman's house, and he's expressed interest in possibly joining the church, and it sits down for a conversation, and it just kind of goes off the rails. It's just this like this tete-a-tete, like just this meeting of the minds of these two girls who, as the movie goes on, you start to understand are kind of at different places in their belief systems and where they come from to the religion. And he's kind of exposing that and manipulating that in the questions that he poses to them about their religion, about their belief. And it kind of just like devolves into this crazy kind of like cat and mouse, but a battle of intellects. And there's this, it's in the trailer, so it's not spoiling anything, but this house that is a bit of a maze of sorts in terms of like kind of, what's the right word, kind of like symbolizing and personifying like the conversation that they're having, like the different doors that could be opened in conversations around religion, and the corners that we kind of get stuck in conversations that, when you're trying to make a point or you're trying to prove a point and you're challenged, or, something comes up that you don't really know how to address or respond to. But I really liked it a lot. I think the screenplay is incredible. I mean, just like I think the movie, I don't think it ends as well as it starts, in the first, I think it kind of almost builds too much for itself to kind of deliver on, but I still think it delivers. Really entertaining. Again, I just love seeing like a mean character like that, coming from a person like Hugh Grant, who kind of built a career around being, a rom-com kind of character, especially in the, 90s, early 2000s. That was like, I don't know that anybody really did it better than Hugh Grant, at least on screen. And I don't know. Beckham Woods.
Nobody does the new thing he does better either, though. You know what I mean? Now that he's leaning into his kind of slimy sort of qualities, I feel like he plays like Dungeons and Dragons. He's a great heel in that. What's the other thing you mentioned? Even Oompa Loompa, his character is not like a heel, but he is like mean and nasty and kind of sarcastic. I just feel like he's leaning into that. So when I saw the trailer for this, I was just like, oh yeah, he's on his tear, having fun, being like it's that thing of a charming actor weaponizing their charm and to be a nasty character. That's so fun to watch.
No, yeah, that's exactly what makes the movie work so well. And I really like Beckham Woods. I mean, most people know them from like writing Quiet Place, or A Quiet Place, the first one. But they made a couple movies on their own, and this is another one that they did with A24, and it's doing pretty well in theaters too, which is cool to see. But definitely recommend it for me. I mean, it's super entertaining, thought-provoking, awesome performances. I was actually going to look this up while you guys were talking. I saw the finger motion to come back. I didn't get the actresses in the movie. The Sophie Thatcher, most people would know from Yellow Jackets. She plays the younger Juliette Lewis character.
Really
but then Chloe East, who's the other girl, the other lead. Only thing I really recognized or knew her from was The Fabelmans. She was in Spielberg's movie from a couple years ago. She was like the girlfriend that Sammy had.
Oh.
But yeah, I don't know. This is just a really entertaining, again, thought-provoking. I love the way it looks. It's shot really great. Like, the cinematography is good. And again, it's all, for me, it's Hugh Grant. I mean, the takeaway from it is Hugh Grant. Just really great performance. Like, just a really fun movie to watch. And yeah, I mean, just really cool conversation around religion and belief and the idea of control. And again, going back to this idea of control, we were talking about it a little earlier with Silo, but like his approach to kind of pushing buttons is really uncomfortable. Especially with two young women in his house who think there's a woman in the other room, which is a requirement for them to even come in and talk about the church. And it's the way it kind of all falls apart. It's so good to watch.
Yeah, it looks great.
I think you both would really dig it for sure. It's a no-brainer.
The two movies I cannot wait to see right now that I think I'm going to get out to the theater. I would have, if I'd had more time, probably seen it before this. But that, The Heretic and or Heretic, not The Heretic.
Yeah, Heretic.
And Conclave. I keep hearing such great things about Conclave.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see. And it's also like Conclave is one of those like, oh, it's a great, well-written drama with all these meaty performances in it, and it's like, oh man, I can't wait to see like a good thriller in like an adult drama with little aspects of a thriller in it can be such a fantastic viewing experience. So I really want to see that one. I don't only want to see spaceships exploding when I go to the theater. I also like to see intimate human interactions. So
Conversations.
Conversation.
Yeah, I think that's all I got, man.
That's a show.
I can't wait to come back to this episode later and listen to what you had to say about Penguin when I eventually watch the Penguin.
So what you can do is just then tell us if you co-sign what we said or not.
Yeah.
I've already went all in. I agree with both of you. All right. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to mention or?
Not I.
So movieshmovie.com is the website. You can go there to subscribe to the podcast in whichever audio platform you prefer. For your podcast as well, you can go to youtube.com/movieshmovie podcast if you want the visual option. You can subscribe to the video channel. There's also an audio channel there. If you just like YouTube in general, you can just go there to listen as well. You don't have to look at us if you don't like.
That's true.
That choice is yours.
We usually talk about it as added value.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe it's like I always think of it, someone listens to the show and they need to know we have a visual version. Someone could be watching us only on YouTube and thinking like, is there any way not to see them?
What are my options here, guys? Do I have to see your faces? No, there's plenty of options. And also on YouTube, we're going to build out this idea around some shorts, some episodes that pop up on there that aren't a part of the main feed that are just going to be made specifically for YouTube. So you can go there, subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified when new episodes come out on the YouTube channel. We'll be back next week. We're going to be doing a special kind of review episode for Gladiator 2. We're going to all be able to see the advanced screening of it. And I think we're going to go mobile, and we're going to kind of do an immediate out-of-theater reaction to that. And then
like a little 0.5, probably.
A little 0.5. We haven't had a 0.5 in a bit. And it'll be cool to kind of come right out of the theater and talk about what could be one of the bigger movies and probably will be one of the bigger movies of the holiday season.
I'm going to come right out of that theater after I see these gladiators.
You can't stop it. You can't. You can't back that up, okay? You can't bottle that up. You got to let it come out.
You got to let it go.
And we will. All of us at the same time in a vehicle. It's going to be weird, but it's going to
get weird. It's going to get weird. It's going to be close.
It's going to be fun, though. And then looking ahead, we'll have I think we're going to do a special a Schmanksgiving episode for the week of Thanksgiving, where we'll do some of the things that all of us are thankful for. So that's a looking ahead for the podcast. But thank you so much for listening to this one. We'll talk to you next week, and as always, you've made our day. Thanks.
Bye.